The Supreme Court stays the UGC's controversial anti-caste discrimination rules, calling them vague and open to misuse. The Chief Justice asks, are we becoming a regressive society? Critics have termed the equity rules exclusionary and unfair to general category students, leading to massive protests. Deputy Maharashtra Chief Minister Aide Pawar, who died in an air crash on Wednesday, is laid to rest in Baramati with full state honours. Thousands of his supporters as well as top leaders across party lines offer their last respects. India eyes a high growth surge as the economic survey projects 7.4% growth in financial year 2026, defying global turmoil and echoing IMF and World Bank predictions. But there is a stark warning too. Without private investment, India's 2047 dream would be tough to realize. After months of unease and talks of a possible switch to the BJP, Congress MP Shashi Tharoor meets Rahul Gandhi and party chief Mallikarjun Kharge, says all is good, signalling a tentative truce as the Congress moves to douse internal fires ahead of the crucial Kerala Assembly polls. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent blasts Europe for its free trade agreement with India, says European nations are placing trade over Ukraine, accuses them of indirectly funding Russia's war. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is in China as he signals a dramatic reset with Beijing, pitching a sophisticated relationship to boost growth. In rare talks with China, trade, visas and migration dominate as Britain hedges against Trump-era unpredictability and seeks new partners. Two federal agents placed on leave after ICU nurse Alex Pretty's fatal shooting sparks outrage across the United States. Trump's mixed signals fuel tensions as Minnesota becomes the flashpoint in America's growing unrest in the backdrop of a brutal crackdown on immigration. China executes 11 gangsters tied to the brutal Myanmar scam empire. Death sentences upheld after crimes of murder, fraud and torture were exposed. Beijing sends fierce warnings to border crime syndicates exploiting chaos. Hello and welcome to the Times of India. You watching Headlines at 8 with me, Neha Khanna. Our top story on the show tonight. Are we becoming a regressive society? With that observation, the Supreme Court today stayed the implementation of the University Grants Commission's controversial anti-discrimination rules that had led to widespread protests across several states. Making strong remarks on the contentious issue, a bench led by Chief Justice of India Surya Kant said there's complete vagueness in the UGC rules. These can be misused and the language needs to be looked into by an expert. The Chief Justice asked, after 75 years, all that we have achieved to become a casteless society, are we becoming a regressive society? If we don't intervene, it will lead to a dangerous impact, will divide society and have a grave impact. He added that the unity of India must reflect in the country's educational institutions. Chief Justice Surya Kant also observed the worst thing which is happening with regard to ragging is that children coming from the south or the northeast carrying their culture and somebody who's alien to this starts commenting on them. Then you have spoken about separate hostels. For God's sake, there are intercaste marriages in our society now, and we have also been in hostels where we all stayed together. The Supreme Court has issued notices to the centre and the UGC on this issue. It was hearing a batch of petitions challenging the UGC Regulations 2026 that mandated all universities and colleges in the country to establish an equal opportunity centre and campus-level panels to inquire into discrimination complaints and promote equity and inclusion. The rules required the committees to include members from other backward classes, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, persons with disabilities and women. This led to protests over allegations that the new regulations lacked a clear mechanism for general category students to raise complaints and warned that the regulations could inadvertently increase inequality. The petitioners argued that the regulations were exclusionary, denying institutional protection to those in the general category, and that such a selective framework encourages hostility against non-reserved categories, making the regulations a tool for division rather than equity. The court has stated that for now, the 2012 UGC guidelines, which were advisory in nature, will continue. The UGC had framed the new regulations following a 2019 public interest litigation filed in the Supreme Court by the mothers of Rohit Vemula and Payal Tavre. These two students died by suicide due to caste-based discrimination which they had faced at their universities. The petition had sought a mechanism to end caste discrimination on campuses.
Yeah, today the Honorable Supreme Court heard our writ petition challenging the UGC regulations which have been enacted recently. The Honorable Supreme Court has stayed the UGC regulations and has kept them in abeyance. The Honorable Supreme Court, in exercise of powers under Article 142, has directed that UGC regulations 2012 will be in operation till further orders, and the matter has been posted for hearing on 19th of March.
So today CGI has appreciated our argument and we must say that it's a very big win for us as we have talking about specifically three particular issues. One is section 3C, which is talking about caste discrimination, and in that particular section the general caste has been excluded, the other caste has been included. So this particular section has been sending a message kind that these three castes, SC, ST and OBCs, has been discriminated by general caste. So this is our argument before the CGI, and CGI appreciated our argument and specifically stated that yes, it is, you are saying correct, and this kind of section, if it is there, definitely it will be a very harsh and very discriminatory for the general caste, general people, and this should be amended, this should be rectified. The other part is in respect of the equity committee, which is formed under section 18 of this particular new UGC sections. We are specifically talking about this. There are no representation, no specific representation has been cited in this particular rules for the general community. CGI also admitted this argument also and suggested that it should be a formation of a specific committee, which includes academicians, legal expert and social workers who has been a knowledge about this particular subject. And now this matter is passed for 19th March, and hopefully something good would be happening.
Maharashtra Deputy Chief Minister Ajit Pawar, who died in a plane crash on Wednesday, was laid to rest today with full state honours in Baramati, his family's political stronghold and where he began his career. The Maharashtra government has announced 3 days of state mourning. Thousands of Ajit Pawar supporters and NCP loyalists gathered ahead of the funeral procession as chants of "Long live Ajit Pawar" rang out. Pawar's family, his wife Sunetra and sons Parth and Jay, as well as uncle and NCP founder Sharad Pawar, were present at the funeral. Ajit Pawar and Sharad Pawar shared a fractured relationship after Ajit rebelled in July 2023, leading a group of MLAs into an alliance with the BJP and triggering the fall of the then-ruling Mahavikas Aghadi coalition. He also ended up splitting the NCP. Leaders from across political parties also attended the funeral, including Home Minister Amit Shah, Maharashtra Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis, Pawar's cousin Supriya Sule and Shiv Sena boss Uddhav Thackeray. 66-year-old Ajit Pawar and 4 others, including both pilots, died after his chartered plane, a Learjet 45, crashed on the runway at the Baramati airfield. The NCP leader was travelling to campaign for his party in local body elections scheduled for next week. India's economy is projected to grow at 7.4% in the financial year 2025-2026 and at 6.8 to 7.2% in the following financial year, according to this year's economic survey. The survey says the growth is being driven by regulatory reforms, a strong macroeconomic base, and a renewed call for private sector investment. The survey, tabled in Parliament by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman and authored by Chief Economic Advisor V. Ananta Nageshwaran, outlines how India plans to navigate a turbulent global economy, including high US tariffs and uncertainty around AI-led growth. For the current fiscal, the 7.4% forecast aligns with the IMF 7.3% and World Bank 7.2% projections. Financial year 2027 growth is expected to moderate slightly, with the two multilateral bodies estimating 6.4% and 6.5% respectively. The report lays out recent reforms such as GST and income tax relief, a simplified direct tax law set to launch in April, and overhauled FDI and bankruptcy norms as the major factors driving India's growth. It also calls for greater private investment in infrastructure and job creation amid growing technological disruption. Citing IMF warnings of an AI bubble in its latest World Economic Outlook, the economic survey flags potential risks of a market correction that could slow capital flows and damage household wealth. India's manufacturing roadmap focuses on global supply diversification, improved quality and deeper trade partnerships. The country is also pushing for self-sufficiency in semiconductors and other critical sectors. Inflation remains subdued. The Reserve Bank of India projects CPI inflation at 2% for the year, well below its 4% target driven by food price corrections. Lower inflation has, however, weighed on nominal GDP, now estimated at 8%, short of the 10.1% budget target. Public capital expenditure continues to rise sharply from 5.93 trillion rupees in financial year 2022 to 11.21 trillion rupees in financial year 2026, reaching 3.1% of the GDP. But the economic survey stresses that sustained growth will need a pivot to private investment to meet India's 2047 development goals. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has hailed the India-European Union Free Trade Agreement as the mother of all deals and a true global game changer. Calling it a breakthrough moment for India's future, Prime Minister Modi said the pact with 27 EU nations would unlock unprecedented opportunities for Indian startups, innovators and creators. The Prime Minister has urged Indian traders and manufacturers to seize the moment, but with quality as the core mantra. Addressing a rally, he said, "This market is now open to us and India must take its very best products to Europe." He also linked the FTA to the vision of an ambitious, self-reliant India, saying the agreement reflects the promise of India's youth and the strength of an Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is confident, competitive and ready to lead on the global stage. The Prime Minister's remarks come days after European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and European Council President Antonio Costa sealed the deal during their India visit.
राष्ट्रपति जी का उद्बोधन 140 करोड़ देशवासियों के आत्मविश्वास की अभिव्यक्ति था। 140 करोड़ देशवासियों के पुरुषार्थ का लेखा जोखा था और 140 करोड़ देशवासी और उसमें भी ज्यादातर युवा उनके एस्पिरेशंस को रेखांकित करने का बहुत ही सटीक उद्बोधन सभी सांसदों के लिए कई मार्गदर्शक बातें भी कल आदरणीय राष्ट्रपति जी ने सदन में सबके सामने रखी है। सत्र के प्रारंभ में ही और 2026 के प्रारंभ में ही आदरणीय राष्ट्रपति जी ने सांसदों से जो अपेक्षाएं व्यक्त की हैं, उन्होंने बहुत ही सरल शब्दों में राष्ट्र के मुखिया के रूप में जो भावनाएं व्यक्त की हैं, मुझे पूरा विश्वास है कि सभी माननीय सांसदों ने उसको गंभीरता से लिया ही होगा और ये सत्र अपने आप में बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण सत्र होता है। ये बजट सत्र है। 21वीं सदी का एक चौथाई हिस्सा बीत चुका है। ये दूसरे चौथाई का प्रारंभ हो रहा है और 2047 विकसित भारत के लक्ष्य को प्राप्त करने के लिए ये महत्वपूर्ण 25 वर्ष का दौर आरंभ हो रहा है।
US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has blasted Europe over its newly signed free trade agreement with India, accusing European leaders of undermining their own stance on the Ukraine war by prioritizing economic interests over geopolitics. In an interview to a US media outlet, Bessent reacted to the landmark EU-India trade deal by arguing that while countries are free to pursue their own economic interests, Europe's choices have exposed what he called a deep contradiction at the heart of its Ukraine policy. Bessent said, Europe and India signing the massive trade deal. Does that threaten America? They should do what's best for them, but I find the Europeans very disappointing because they are on the front line of the Ukraine-Russia war. Bessent accused European countries of indirectly financing the conflict, which they publicly condemn. After Russia invaded Ukraine and the imposition of Western sanctions, India significantly increased its purchases of discounted Russian crude oil. According to Bessent, Europe then became a major buyer of the refined products made from that oil. Bessent says India started buying sanctioned Russian oil, and guess who was buying the refined products? The Europeans. So the Europeans have been funding the war against themselves, something you couldn't have made up. The US Treasury Secretary argues that while the United States responded by imposing a 25% tariff on India for purchasing Russian oil, Europe declined to join Washington in similar measures. Bessent told the interviewer, the Europeans were unwilling to join us, and it turns out because they wanted to do this trade deal. Every time you hear a European talk about the importance of the Ukrainian people, remember that they put trade ahead of the Ukrainian people. Trade is more important than ending the war in Ukraine, he said. The EU-India Trade Pact, one of the largest such agreements in years, is expected to deepen economic ties between the two sides.
The global trade map is shifting, and India is now at the center of a fresh transatlantic fault line. Just a day after the India-EU Free Trade Agreement was announced, sharp reactions emerged from Washington. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent publicly criticized European countries for signing the deal with India, calling Europe's move very disappointing. Speaking to American television, Bessent said countries must act in their own interest, but he questioned Europe's choices at a time when the Ukraine-Russia war continues. He pointed out that the United States imposed a 25% tariff on India for buying Russian oil, yet Europe went ahead and concluded a major trade agreement with New Delhi. The US Treasury Secretary accused Europe of putting trade ahead of the Ukrainian people. His message was sharp and political. According to Bessent, European trade interests now matter more than ending the war in Ukraine. These remarks came just a day after India and the European Union announced they had finalized their free trade agreement. The deal ends nearly 2 decades of negotiations. Indian officials have described it as the mother of all trade deals. It is India's 19th trade agreement and one of its most ambitious. The agreement is expected to sharply boost Indian exports to the 27-nation EU bloc. It could reshape competition across sectors like textiles, manufacturing, engineering goods, and services. The timing is crucial. Global trade is under strain, US tariffs are high, supply chains are fragile, geopolitical tensions remain intense. India is currently facing steep tariffs from the United States. Europe too risks higher American duties. Yet in this environment, New Delhi has secured a major market opening. Adding to the contrast, US Trade Representative Jameson Greer offered a very different assessment. Speaking to Fox Business, Greer said that after reviewing the deal, India comes out on top. He said India is likely to have a heyday once the agreement is implemented. Greer highlighted India's wider access to European markets. He also pointed to mobility provisions. European leaders have spoken about easing movement for Indian workers. If realized, this could open new doors for Indian professionals and skilled labor in Europe. Greer also explained Europe's motivation. With the US turning inward and prioritizing domestic manufacturing, the EU is searching for new markets. Europe is doubling down on globalization. In that shift, India has emerged as the most attractive partner. From New Delhi's perspective, the message is clear. India is no longer just reacting to global trade pressures, it is shaping outcomes. As Washington and Brussels pull in different directions, India is positioning itself as a central pillar in the evolving global trade order.
Two US federal agents linked to the fatal shooting of ICU nurse Alex Pretty during an immigration raid in Minneapolis have been placed on administrative leave as outrage over the killing of a US citizen explodes nationwide. Pretty was shot multiple times after being forced to the ground by masked immigration officers. A chilling confrontation caught on camera and now seared into public memory. Authorities call the move standard protocol, but anger is mounting as questions swirl over who fired first, who authorized the use of force, and why lethal shots were unleashed on a man already pinned down. Preliminary findings sent to US lawmakers have only deepened the storm. Reports say a Border Patrol agent opened fire while Pretty was on the ground, followed by a Customs and Border Protection officer who also fired his weapon. Multiple videos show other agents restraining Pretty in the moments before the shooting. The killing has drawn condemnation across party lines, especially after early attempts by the Trump administration to justify the shooting and shift blame onto the victim, a narrative now under fierce scrutiny. This tragedy comes just weeks after another fatal shooting in Minnesota when ICE officers killed Renee Good, a mother of three, fueling accusations of unchecked force by federal agents. Under mounting pressure, President Donald Trump has reshuffled leadership on the ground, pulling out hardline Border Patrol Chief Greg Bovino and sending in Border Czar Tom Homan. But Trump's messaging has been erratic and volatile, calling for de-escalation one moment, then warning Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey that he was playing with fire. Minnesota has become the epicenter of America's most explosive debate on immigration enforcement and the use of deadly force. That's all the time we have on this edition of Headlines at 8. Thanks so much for watching. Do join us again. Bye for now.